that you've done for me. Who brings our chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King above all kings. Who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You would lay down your life. That I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Oh, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You lay down your life. That I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me.
All right, guys, keep on standing as we sing the next one, Trust in You.
Letting go of every single dream.
job, you guys. Sit down.
All right, as we mentioned earlier, I think someone mentioned that we don't normally have a chapel on a Tuesday when we had a Monday off, but we thought this was important enough, and Pastor wanted you guys to see what God is doing through a ministry of the Florida Association of Christian Schools. I think it's called IX, and we have the president here with us, and so I'm going to ask Pastor Tony Hammon to come on up, and I'm going to give him the rest of the time here in chapel.
So how many of you know where the nation of Uganda is? Raise your hand. How many of you think it's in South America? Raise your hand. All right, how many of you think it's in Africa? Raise your hand. Okay, it's in Africa. We're going to see that in a couple of minutes. How many of you are soccer players? Who's a soccer player? Are you? You ever see a soccer ball like this? You can look at that, but don't tear it up, all right? This is what they play soccer with in Uganda. It's a bunch of banana leaves wrapped together. So when we take a soccer ball and give it away in Uganda, it's like giving away an entire athletic department. It's amazing. We've given away probably hundreds or more of these soccer balls. So let me have it back. There you go. They're pretty durable. I was playing with some guys one time. We were running up a hill, and I started kicking around, and they thought that was pretty cool that this old guy could play soccer with them. So we had a good time. Let's take a look at this clip, and as we do this, I want you to remember a couple of things. Not only am I going as president at IACS into different countries, third world countries, trying to help them improve their schools and their orphanages, but I'm also many times taking unsaved people with me. In this clip you're going to watch, there are 3 people that don't know Christ yet. One of them received Christ, and I baptized just a couple of weeks ago at Island Community Church with water mixed in with our water from Lake Victoria in Uganda. So that was kind of a neat thing to see what God is doing. One of the men you'll see in this is a guy that will have this kind of fishhook thing around his neck. He owns Mangrove Mike's in Islamorada, for those of you that ever come to the Keys. And Mike is the mayor of the Village of the Islands. And so, and he does not know Christ yet, but he's about that close. He's now my next door neighbor. God's placed him right in a house next to mine. So it's really exciting to see what God is doing on a foreign mission field, but also in a mission field right here at home as I work with what's going on with IACS. How many of you have ever heard of IACS? IACS is the International Association of Christian Colleges and Schools, and it's a division of FACS. Pastor Mortensen is the president of FACS, Florida Association of Christian Colleges and Schools, and our goal is to just help Christian schools become better. But let's take a look at this clip, and I think you'll enjoy what you're going to watch.
I've done a lot of mission trips. I've been to China, I've been to Thailand. Uganda, the children have captured my hearts. Giving the kids the beds had been a prayer I had all year. When I saw the beds stacked up, it just gave me so much joy knowing that those children would be sleeping on a comfortable bed, not on the wire. So I really feel that this team made a huge impact on Uganda, both in helping to sustain the people, but also to feed the people with knowledge So, Pastor Tony, we just thank you for allowing us to come with you and for being part of this. God has really blessed us.
I got a different insight to humanity, and shortly after that, I finally accepted Jesus in my heart after spending the time with Tony and all the people here. And so then I became a Christian. So this year I came back in a whole different light for myself, and I got to experience a culture that really lives as Christians, whether they realize it or not. They just live in humility and love for each other, regardless of their religion or status. None of that exists. It's just a love for and respect for humanity and each other.
We've established a clinic with a physician, and we'll have him come to visit the children twice a month. And we've bought medications, put cost to each tablet, so that way they can sell them and make a profit. And then we've also started a Piggy Project 2018, which is where we buy pigs, which reproduce at high rate and apparently sell really well here, to try and start some kind of a mini economy.
I will remember the smiling faces of the kids forever and ever. It's emotional because what you see and what you do here makes a huge impact, I think, on why we come. And these people truly believe in God and bless us and thank us for everything that we do. And it makes you realize the presence of God here and how important that our work is while we're here.
Uganda is the most God-fearing, God-loving country I've ever been to. With so little, their hearts are so big. The other day we were giving away cows to some of the schools around, and you place your hand out, and the kids just want to touch you. They just want to touch who you are, and they want to be loved. And it was just so amazing to see them and give them a little piece of candy. It was heartwarming.
Great moments, great team, great children. That's the key to the children. That's why I come. They're just so loving, and they're so appreciative of what they have, and what they have is not much, but they're happy. They're happy for just the little things that we take for granted. So I'll leave with a little bit of a heavy heart. And I look forward to next year, so I can come back and see them growing, and see their beautiful nature and their beautiful smiles, and feel like I'm enriching others, hopefully. And I'll be planning for next year on the flight back.
Hello, I'm Mikey.
And I'm Sydney.
And this is our first mission trip.
Yeah.
And I am so glad to do this. At first, I was kind of nervous because we're in another country and I didn't know how it was going to be. But after seeing all the children and seeing how the people are, it amazed me.
For me, my biggest takeaway was to see people with so few material possessions having so much love and hope and care for each other, regardless of their economic situation. It was very beautiful and impactful.
So that celebration was over. The one lady was off her meds, but other than that, that celebration was over, I think, giving a cow away, just to give you an example of the joy that they have. So we're going to show you some slides, and what we're going to do, this is going to be a little bit of show and tell. I'm going to flip through these slides real fast. Then hopefully at the end I'll have time for you to ask me some questions and talk a little bit about IACS and what's going on. So go ahead whenever you're ready on that. This is a typical school. And you can see that you got facts and IACs and all of that going on. And you don't need a mic to do that. Just do it. All right, so this is IACs. This is a typical schoolhouse in Uganda. And this is a typical schoolhouse in most third world countries. So just realize that that's not exactly what Westwood Christian School looks like, is it? There's the nation of Uganda right above Lake Victoria. We fly in there. We're also dealing with some schools in South Sudan. This just happened just very, very recently. And then, you guys hear that ring? Is that somebody's cell phone? No, you know what? You're going to hear that every 4 seconds. And I've had somebody doing that on purpose. Every time you hear that ring, that's a child dying somewhere around the world, either from poverty or diseases that could easily be controlled and cured. You know what the second most common killer of children under 5 years old in third world countries is? Diarrhea. They dehydrate and die. So listen, as we're going to have fun looking at these slides, just think, every 4 seconds, that's another child somewhere around the world dying. While we sit here in our comfort, in our homes, eating our Whoppers or our Big Macs, and clicking our tongue and going, somebody should do something about that. I came to the place in my life as a pastor and as a school administrator where I could no longer stand that. Sometimes in my church we talk about having a Popeye moment. Remember what Popeye used to say in the Popeye cartoons? Right before he'd pop the can of spinach and eat it? He'd have a favorite saying. He said, I can't stand it, I just can't stand it no more. And he'd take his spinach and then he would right whatever wrong there was. Well, I had a Popeye moment. I said, I can't stand that. When I would hear that ringer go off or a bell go off like that and think about it, every 4 seconds a child is dying and I'm sitting in the comfort of my home. I have to do something. And so that's why I took the presidency of IACS. And that's why we're doing what we're doing in not just Uganda, we're in Haiti. We have an association going. We formed an entire school association. Right now, there's over 200 schools involved in the Ugandan Association of Christian Colleges and Schools. That's actually maybe more schools than we have in facts. And certainly the numbers of students represent about 20,000 students, I believe. Huge orphanages there. All right, so let's move through this. This is what it looks like in this one village called Katusi on Lake Victoria. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? People here have less than $1 a day to spend. Teachers that work in Uganda work for less than $3,000 a year. This is a team walking through the village. Everywhere we'd walk, we'd have little children wanting to grab us and hang on to us. And they many times you'd feel this little tug on your pant leg or on your arm. And they go, please, take me with you. It's one of the most heartbreaking things because these children are orphans. Many of them have been left on the street, and they put them on the street, and if somebody doesn't come and claim them, they're left on the street to die like a stray animal. In Kampala, where there are millions of children living, children with no name because they've been left there by people who have just abandoned them, and so they just become part of this orphan group. They have a term for them. They call them chikara, and they kick at them like a stray dog when they want to run them off. Chikara. Now for us, white travelers, we're called Mzungu. Try that. Mzungu. Mzungu. That means white traveler. It's a compliment, unless they say like Mzungu. And then that means white person running around like a chicken with his head cut off, has no clue about what he's doing. So it depends on the kind of attitude they have. But this is the team. Think about what kind of animals do you see in Uganda? I went expecting to see elephants and rhinoceroses and giraffes and all of these things. That's really disappointing because you see things like this. By the way, those big cows were on a soccer pitch in the middle of town. These vultures are as big as we are. You see a few monkeys here and there. And then this last time I went, walking down the road, I saw these guys riding camels, and I said, what? And the guy said, oh, yeah, we have camels here. I'd never seen it. That's a giant termite hill. Yeah, they're all over the place. Jackfruit. Remember this guy's face. This guy started what we call the cow ministry, and you'll understand what that means in just a few minutes. But we buy those fruit, and they have a seed inside that you eat, and it takes some getting used to, but you could live on jackfruit if you had to. This is the source of the Nile. Lake Victoria is where the Nile comes out of. It looks beautiful until you kind of get into the poverty of the place. This is the right outside the village. I'm baptizing, barely see me in the corner of the picture. I'm baptizing 50 people on this day from this church. And they had to send a guy out in front of us. If you look, there's a guy kind of standing off to the side with his back to everybody, looking out at Lake Victoria. He's watching for crocodiles to make sure no crocodiles come in and grab us while we're baptizing. And I heard a splash behind me one time, and I almost walked on water. I thought for sure that there was a crocodile going to have me for lunch, and it turned out it was just a little wave breaking on the lake. But we were baptizing these people. Some of them had never been underwater before. They'd never been in a lake. They couldn't swim. So when you'd baptize them, they would come out flailing and hollering and crying and carrying on. It was something to experience. But it was an unusual experience. You'll see a water system we put in here in just a few minutes. We put the water system in because before I started going to Uganda, 2 of the children from this orphanage were getting water in Lake Victoria, and crocodiles grabbed both of them and ate them, killed them. We hear about things like that in America, and we go, there's just no way that can be happening. Yeah, it does. Welcome to third world country stuff. Typical village, huts. This is the way they carry things on bicycles. This last time I saw a guy carrying a full bed on a motorcycle. I mean, a whole bed. You just think, how could they even do that? Rotary Club has sponsored IACs, believe it or not. People that some know Christ, some don't know Christ. But one man in this club that I belong to has actually supplied, we're up to 80 some odd cows right now, and he's supplied probably 60% of those cows at $1,000 a pop. So he's given me in the neighborhood of $60,000 at this point. These pictures, well, look at that one. Median age in Uganda, and this is true in a lot of third world countries, 15.7 years. It's a nation of children. How many of you are between 15 and 16 years old? Raise your hand. Imagine being the oldest person in your village. There are villages I go into where the oldest person is a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old. Just unbelievable. Well, these get your heart. This is why you go. That's the mayor I was telling you about. This man in the suit was captured by Idi Amin as a teenager, was raised by American missionaries, captured by Idi Amin, was imprisoned as a teenager, and then was released and started an orphanage. His orphanage and school have, I think, 1,200 children. Imagine trying to feed that many children every day, 3 meals a day. I was asked to speak to this group of children, and I looked out this way, no microphone. There was a sea of children this way. I looked back over, same number of children that way. I looked over this way, same number of children. And they said, we want you to speak to these children. So I just told them about Jesus. Told them about Jesus and told them about Jesus. Group of high school kids, we were supposed to get there in the afternoon. It was almost dark when we got there, almost 6 o'clock. High school kids still sitting around waiting for me to come and speak to them. I doubt that most of you, if you heard somebody who was going to come and speak to you sometime in the afternoon, would sit around and just wait until 5 or 6 o'clock at night waiting on somebody to show up to speak. This is the typical, what it looks like in an orphanage. Mosquito netting, if they are fortunate enough to have mosquito netting, will help prevent malaria. Those little blue boxes will be all of their belongings. That's everything they own in the world. Everything. So whatever they have, they really treasure. They're really grateful for. But the amazing thing about it is, if I had candy, you heard the one man mention giving candy away, and I always get on him for giving the candy away. I said, we're giving away toothbrushes and toothpaste, and here you are giving away candy. Stop it. So we give away the toothbrushes and toothpaste. But if I gave you 2 pieces of candy, you know, a lot of American children would take one piece and put it in their mouth and one piece and put it in their pocket, right? Not in Uganda. They would take, if I gave you 2 pieces, you'd hand the other piece over. I watched some cake fall on the floor one time, just crumbs from a cake. And this little child ran and picked up all of the crumbs of the cake. And instead of eating the crumbs himself, he went over and he handed crumbs to this friend and this friend and this friend, and they all ate these crumbs because it was a huge treat for them to just get that. But they shared. That was my point. These children are raised, this is one of the poorest group of children you'll ever see. They don't even have school uniforms because they're so poor. They're saluting, they're saying, we are the children of a chosen generation. We have been called to bring change to this village. And their parents stay in a drunken stupor on this sauce that they make in the jungle. And so these children are in this Christian orphanage, and their goal is to bring change to the village for the cause of Christ. Listen, those of you that are Westwood Christian, don't ever forget this. You are the hope of the next generation because of what Jesus will do in your life. Christ is the hope of the world. And Christ operates through the church. So the church is the hope of the world. And the Christian school and the training that we're doing in Christian schools is the hope of the world, both for now and for the future. And what we're doing in Uganda will change the course of the nation of Uganda. I have people come up and hug me and shake my hand and say, you have changed the course of the nation of Uganda. And it's not just me. There are thousands of missionaries going there. This man was raised in an orphanage. He's now standing at the bed where he grew up, and he now runs that orphanage. People often ask what happened to the orphans. This little one is from that man's orphanage. The one in the red was HIV positive and passed away between this photo and the next time I made it to Uganda. But these orphanages play such a vital role in the lives of these children. This is a typical school building. This is a 5th grade classroom, and you notice, think about this as a sign outside of your classroom door. The spread of AIDS can be prevented. 5th graders, and they're having to teach that this is important to be controlled. Your school cafeteria looks a little different than yours, doesn't it? That's the school cafeteria, believe it or not. This is a classroom. Somebody asked me what that big lump was in the floor one time. I said it's a rock they couldn't move, so they just teach around it. This is a teacher teaching a class of junior hires outside. Pretty good stuff, and she's doing a great job. Kindergarten class. I love to show this to my kindergarten teachers when they start complaining about having 13 or 14 children in their class. This is a class of 100 5-year-olds with 1 teacher and 2 aides. It's crazy, isn't it? Teachers are all going, what? And they get a job done. It's amazing. There is your best of the best bathroom facilities in these Ugandan schools. Some schools are better than others. This was in a city of Jinja, school that actually I think is about ready to go through accreditation. Here we are starting. One day I was invited to come to Uganda, so I did. I brought bylaws, statement of faith, constitution from fax. We converted it to IACS. We got up, we taught the people about it. They filled out the application form, and on that day, 180 schools joined the new Ugandan Association of Christian Colleges and Schools. I sat back and watched it form and just let them take the leadership, which they have done. This is a building we put in. See how, and this is IACS money at work. A man in my church helped fund this and built this educational complex. That's the name of the house is Wilsey House, and that's the cow guy that I told you about. This guy and I met, And he was complaining about not having a place to train nurses and teachers. And I said, what do you do with your facilities at night? And he said, well, they just sit empty. And I said, you have electricity? He said, yes. I said, okay, then I commission you. You now have the training center for nurses and teachers in this region. And you can see the light bulb go off. I saw him the next year, and he said, we have trained 6 teachers and 9 nurses. And so he's got a training center now in this building that never existed before. This is a vocational school that's been started. These are ladies right off of the street that have been taken in and taught how to become seamstress and hairdressers and things of that nature. This is a radio show that we do every year. It goes out. I asked him one day when I was doing the radio show, I said, so how many people is this reaching? He said, 6 to 8 million people. Now, if you had the chance to talk to 6 to 8 million people, what would you talk to them about? What would you guess I talked to them about? I talked to them about Jesus. The opportunity to get to speak to 6 to 8 million people at one time, that doesn't happen very often. And so you better make sure your message is clear. Water is a huge issue in Uganda. This is they call these boda boda. That's a motorcycle. I have warnings all over the place. Don't ride boda boda. More fatalities with boda boda than anything else. This is a guy carrying all those yellow things are those yellow jugs that they carry water in. You'll see some of them here in this next picture. These are guys getting water from a well. Usually these wells have been put in by some missions group. This broke our heart because even though we had a water system in this village, this little guy was still going down in Lake Victoria and gathering water. And, they'll say, the crocodiles don't bother anybody anymore, but it just scares me every time I see one of those. This is the water system we put in. This little guy down on the bottom of the picture was in 3rd grade when I took him to Uganda with his dad, and his dad helped fund that water system. Not only does that water system supply water for an orphanage of nearly 1,000 children, it supplies water for this entire village, which has 20,000 people in it. We opened a clinic, or have a clinic that we're helping to supply. Very challenging. That's Dr. Diaz that you saw in the video, and Wendy, the lady that received Christ that I was able to baptize a few weeks ago. Reason I showed you this is a contrast. They have witch doctors. This is the witch doctor's place. Witch doctors are bad guys. In Uganda, in northern Uganda, in a place called Gulu, and forgive me for being so blunt about this, they're going in, or they'll come down to Kampala. They'll snatch these children that don't even have a name, take them out in the jungles, mutilate them, and kill them, leave them there for dead, thinking it brings wealth or prosperity to their village. And there's a guy named Bob Goff in California that's an author and is an attorney, consul to the nation of Uganda, who's started to take these witch doctors to task. And they're challenging them. But if it was not for the gospel of Jesus Christ, these witch doctors would have the nation upside down. They were telling people not to believe the Western medicine. That was Western medicine that was causing AIDS. And so that's why the epidemic got as bad as it did, because the witch doctors were just fighting against us. You can see this is an orphanage. The one child is Ugandan, but is an albino Ugandan, and would have almost no chance of survival if they didn't live on the orphanage or in the orphanage, because they'd be taken, the witch doctors would take them and think that they were cursed, or that there was something wrong, and that they would eliminate them for the sake of prosperity for the village. It's a horrible thing, but this does occur at times in Uganda. Doing what I love to do, and that is get down and work with the kids while I'm there. Here's your typical meat market. The good news is the price of the meat goes down as the day goes on. The longer it hangs out there, the cheaper it gets. But finding food is a big issue here. This is the way they transport chickens in Uganda. And these vendors will come running up to you. They'll take these chickens and they do chicken on a stick, and they'll run up to your vehicle. And the guys have all eaten chicken on a stick. I won't eat chicken on a stick because I want to stay healthy while I'm in Uganda. But the other guys have done so. Nile perch about the size of a tarpon, for those of you that know about tarpon. I was taking this picture, and there's a huge man off to the side, and I hear, no, no, no. And I look, and he's looking at me, and he goes, no, no. And stop taking pictures. So they were doing something that apparently they didn't want pictures taken of. We have fed thousands of Ugandans each time I go, and on this special Children's Day that we do for them, we're feeding about 2,000 children on this day. This last time we went, we bought a full cow and gave them a cow to eat as part of their meal. This is nets that they use for these fishing villages, and they catch these little minnows. They use the minnows as a powder for food for livestock, but also for humans. A guy asked me one day, have you looked at what you're eating? And I said, no, not really. And I really was not too concerned about what I was eating, because I was sitting there and I was a guest of honor, and these children were performing in front of me. And all of a sudden, I felt something go plop on my head. It'd be just like being in this building. And I looked up, and there were bats hanging from the ceiling. And one of the bats had given me a present right on top of my head. And I went, at first I went, who squirted my head with sunscreen? And then I went, oh, that's not sunscreen. So I asked the guy down the way, I said, do you have any of those wet wipes? So he handed me some wet wipes. He goes, have you looked at what you're eating? I said, no. And I looked closely at that meal, and I don't know if you can see it in the photos, but they're little minnows looking back at you. And so I went, So I ate a couple of them, but I ate around most of the minnows, and I saw a little guy sitting in the crowd, and he looked really, really hungry. And so I went, anyway. So I slid him my plate, and he slid me his empty plate, and we had a fair trade, so I didn't have to eat any of those minnows looking back at me. This is a fishing village. This is the poorest village we've gone into. You heard Dr. Diaz talk about the piggy farm. We told him if they would build the farm, the area for the pigs, we'd buy the pigs. Before we landed in the United States in November of this year, or last year, they had already sent us pictures of the piggy farm that they'd built. So these guys, the poorest village I've ever been in. This is in a home in the village. A lady asked me if I'd come in and bless her home. And you can see that she's just got visqueen for a roof over top. You see the shoes are stacked up on the top near the roof because there's just no room. I think there's a family of about 5 live in this little building. This is the piggy farm being built. Here we are serving the kids. They all come with little plates, and they sit down, they eat on the ground. You know you're a Ugandan when they don't give you silver anymore and you just eat with your fingers, which I'm now a Ugandan, so I eat with my fingers. This lady had a nursery of abandoned children. When people were abandoned, the police would bring these children to her, and she would take these babies and start caring for them. And she took pride in being self-sufficient, self-sustaining. And so one day I said to her, what would make you more self-sustaining? And she said, a cow. I said, a cow? What would you do with a cow? And she said, I need the milk for the babies. And I said, okay, let me see what I can do. So I came back to the United States, and this is one of her babies. The little baby in the stripes being held by the lady was born HIV positive and passed away, did not survive. So the mortality rate is very high. You have to get used to that in Uganda. But this guy, when I came back, the guy that was waving with all the children, he said, I'll buy a cow. And he said, how much are they? I said, they're about $1,000, is what I understand. And he said, I'll buy one. And so he bought the cow, and this is me taking the cow to that lady. That was the first cow that we bought, and now we're up to about 80-some cows, and the cows are reproducing and making calves, so we have more than 80 cows because they keep producing them. But this is why we keep going and why we need that milk for the babies. There's the mayor giving away one of the cows. I want you to see this clip. Now imagine a group of American kids. Suppose I pulled up out here and I said, guess what, Westwood? We're going to give you a cow. Whoopee, right? Uh-oh, that's somebody's phone. Watch this. This is just the joy over getting a cow. Here's why. One cow produces about 17 liters of milk a day. They cut the milk 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 with water and rice and sugar. Each baby gets a half a liter a day. That's at least 102 babies. If you do the math on that, you'll recognize it's 132 babies if they cut it 3 to 1. So that's why they're so excited. This is the difference between life or death in many cases with these children. We give away bicycles to the headmasters of the school. They call them proprietors, so they can get back and forth because they have to be back and forth at the school a lot more than others. Soccer balls, we've given away hundreds of soccer balls and other kinds of balls, thousands of toothbrushes and toothpaste. This is one of the conferences I go over every year. You know how we have the FACS convention in Orlando and the teachers all go? We do FACS conventions basically in Uganda and these other countries, in Haiti, and it's a one-man show. And I'm teaching them. That's my crew of administrators at one of the conventions. This is another one of the conventions outside there. We're almost through. This guy, Rick Moeller, the man on that side, is with Mike Forrester and I. He was battling cancer. We were in Atlanta on the way to Uganda. 2 years ago, we got a call that he had lost his battle with cancer. And I was a Christian. I had led him to the Lord and had baptized him out in the Atlantic Ocean. And Mike, the mayor, was so moved by this that he said, he had just come off his campaign. He said, I want to use my campaign funds to do something in honor of Rick Moeller. So we started this thing called the Rick Strong Playground. Now we've put the playground equipment in place, and this is when we arrive at this is orphanage. Look at all those. We've arrived at this orphanage, and this is the greeting we got. I'm not going to let it run all the way through. They just keep saying, you're welcome, you're welcome, you're welcome, and it goes on and on and on. The video's about 6 minutes long, so that's the reason I'm not going to show it all to you. So here's the Rick Strong Playground. If you guys, if anybody stops at Mangrove Mike's and I'm ready to eat, you can go in and say, I saw your picture in Uganda at the Rick Strong Playground. That's the playground equipment that we put in. And then he also started the Shoe That Grows. You saw pictures in the video of these shoes. These shoes will go into 6 different sizes. And so we're putting them on the feet of orphans that have never had shoes on their feet before. There's him clipping one on. I also found a little guy walking along with a Samaritan's Purse, Operation Christmas Child Bible, and shows that when we send those boxes, those shoe boxes and those gifts for Samaritan's Purse at the end of or at Christmas time, it makes it all the way there to these villages. This is a typical dormitory where the orphans live. Typical beds that we replaced with these. We spent $10,000 on beds and mattresses this year for the orphans. And this is just a summary of some of the things that we've done. Water system, 55 cows. This was 2 years ago. 33 goats, 350 pair of shoes that grow, education buildings, medical clinic, playground, soccer balls, bicycles, metal beds, orphanage, baby cribs, food for orphans, school uniforms, 300 schools, 60,000 students, insect netting, teach administrators and teachers in 2-day, 3-day conferences. That's 2 years ago now. This year we've updated it. 15 more cows. One gave birth, so we ended up getting 16 for the price of 15, 5,000 for mattresses, 5,000 beds, 1,000 for insect netting, 15 goats, 30 soccer balls, thousands of toothbrushes and toothpaste, whole cow to feed 2,000 children, Dr. Diaz, meds, clinic, piggy farm. I went with a team of 10 this year. That was the largest team I've taken. 15,000 for or 1,500 rather for shoes, 200 pair of shoes that grow, 287 new shirts, and again taught the educational conferences, started sports teams and athletic programs in the school. So it's been pretty busy. I want you to look at these 2 questions as we wrap it up, because these are the 2 questions that changed my life. First of all, Craig Rochelle is an old preacher, or he's a young preacher, and Craig Rochelle has this phrase, and I love the phrase. He goes, if you ain't dead, you ain't done. And so as I thought, well, my ministry is kind of coming down to an end, God said, nah, you ain't dead, you ain't done. And these got my attention. Look what they say. What if there are children who will suffer because I somehow fail to obey God? What if there are children somewhere in this world who will suffer, or adults for that matter, who will suffer because I do nothing? Because I go, I'm just one person, what can I do? What difference will I make? You may make the difference between life and death. And then the last question, what if my cowardice or indifference cost even one child somewhere in the world his or her life? When I spend money now, I find myself stopping and thinking, do I want to spend this money for this pleasure? Or do I want to spend this money to take care of an orphan somewhere in the world? It's affected my wallet. It's affected my life. It's affected everything about me. So that's all. I know we've run a long time, so any questions real quick or anything else? I'm going to lead you in a word of prayer when we get through here. Yes, ma'am. English? Is that what you ask? They do speak English. There are several dialects in Uganda, but they all have to learn how to speak English in the school. And so there's a dialect called Lugandan around Lake Victoria that they speak, and I know very little of it. It's Muzungu, it's about it. Somebody else. I saw kids, teachers, anyway. Yes, ma'am. What? HIV is a virus that would get into humans probably from when they skinned monkeys, and now the monkeys is transmitted to humans through body fluid contact. Very, 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 very devastating disease in Africa. Uganda is one of the countries that's kind of turned the table on that. Yes, sir. That was what I was just explaining. Yeah, that's what I just explained. Okay, anyone else? All right, let's pray and we'll let you go. I know you're just anxious to get back to class, right? Can't wait. Had a day off yesterday and now we got class. Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for today. Thank you for each one of the kids. Thank you for the way they listen today. We pray that you will bless them, be with them. Father, we pray that you might move just among even the student body to raise up someone who will say, yes, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to answer the call of God in my life, whether it's for a mission field or whether it's for missions right here in the United States, Father. I pray that you will bless these children and pray that they will remember that they are the hope of the world because of what Jesus is doing in them, and that they can make a difference and that they can change lives. Thank you for your Son. Thank you for your salvation. Thank you for the opportunity and the privilege that we've had to be together today. In Jesus' name.